Ladies and gentlemen, everyone around and in between, it is NFALD Debate Sensei, the show where we talk about things relevant to NFALD competitive debate. I have with me Dr. Justin Kirk from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Thank you so much for being here, Doc.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. So, this is our season finale. It has been a long season. We started with Chad. We're ending with Justin. Maybe Chad will join us as we go. But the strange thing about the end of the season is actually the beginning of the following season.
Yep.
That we're getting started with 2024, 2025 with a topic announcement, or at least the topic area announcement for right now. And that topic area has been decided: artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was, I think artificial intelligence led most of the ballots through the way. I think it had a plurality of votes in every one of the ballots. So it seemed like, it had less than 50% in the first two ballots, but in the third ballot, I think it beat out ag by like 5 votes. So,
okay.
It was one of those topics that it seemed like it was going to get a lot of traction because of its kind of relevance to the current state of technology and economics and stuff like that. Additionally, I think students are very interested in this topic as well. And so I think that probably helped it out as well. This was a student written paper by a couple of my debaters. And I think a lot of other students are very interested in this topic area as well.
Yeah. The timeliness, especially because in the last episode we were talking about how in the next time that this would come around in the NFALD cycle, as far as being the topics, it'll be a completely different debate, and so how nascent it is, I think, is absolutely. I'm really happy to see it. I want to see what sort of arguments come from it.
Well, I think that the nice thing about a topic like this, especially with a technology that's so new, is that everybody is kind of undecided on the actual impacts of it. And so experts are actually having debates about what development will look like, what restrictions will look like. And there's two sides to most of these arguments. Yes, these restrictions will look good. No, these restrictions will not look good, right? And I think that given that it is a new technology and there's so much uncertainty, there's going to be a lot of fascinating, in-depth debates between expert analysis on this question.
And there'll be new stuff coming out all the time that will change that expert analysis too. I mean, somebody's going to come out with some sort of new a new app or a new way to use a pre-existing app, and then all of a sudden that'll change things, because predictions are only so good as until reality sets in,
right?
So and just the rapidly evolving nature of it, I mean, that'll make inherency just a bitch throughout the entire season, it seems like.
It will, but I also think there's this interesting avenue teams could take, right? I don't know if you've been paying attention to what's been happening with Google's Gemini recently, but they one of the data sets they used for Google's Gemini was Reddit, which allows Google Gemini to assume that Reddit's posts that are nonsense are actual facts that it can rely on.
Right.
So it's been producing a bunch of really weird results. And so I think one of the interesting areas to discuss is company specific models are wildly different approaches to AI. Google's model, OpenAI's model, Microsoft's model, they're all based on kind of different principles. And so discussions about which kind of models you privilege or which kind of LLMs you're looking at, things like that, I think as the year goes on, those debates will develop better too.
Okay. All right. So let's know a little bit more about the process, what stage that you are in right now. So now that the topic has been decided, what I was reading up on in the Facebook group is that now you're going to have a series of meetings to discuss the wording of the topic. And that goes through until, was it June 8th? Or
June 8th is the day that the ballot will go out to folks.
Okay.
So what we'll do is we're recording this on Thursday, May 30th. So there's a meeting tonight. I don't know that people will see this in time for that, but there's also 3 meetings next week in the first week of June on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And during those, I mean, right now we're at our initial stages. I've sent out a couple of research projects to folks that are going to be at the meeting tonight, researching things like which mechanisms can the government use to restrict AI? Which words are best used for defining the resolution? There's a big section of the topic paper that talks about the distinction between regulation and restriction.
Okay.
And the topic paper authors kind of note that regulations can both regulate something to expand in a certain way or contract, whereas restriction is a regulation that contracts the available options,
Okay.
right? And so one of the things that the topic papers authors kind of note is that a topic wording that thinks about something like regulation might produce less debatable topics than something like restriction. So those are the kind of discussions we're going to have tonight, Monday, Tuesday, and potentially next Thursday as well if we need a fourth meeting. I tend to plan more meetings than we typically need for these things because sometimes you find that, we settle on a resolution after a few hours of discussion or a few kind of goes around the bend with research. And then people will come back and say, hey, I don't think this wording is viable because of these things I found. We'll revisit. That's why we're having multiple meetings so we can send people back to do like homework assignments of like, hey, we need to know what this part of the topic is saying to us. And then the other group of people right now are researching potential areas to restrict. So things like medical devices, things like language models, or things like generative AI. Those are all different areas of AI that the resolution could affect. And so I think that's going to be the biggest task of the topic committee is finding ways to limit all the different things that you could talk about under AI.
Yeah, because from what I'm hearing from you is that a topic committee like this tries to avoid bi-directional topics. Am I getting that right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, you don't want to give the affirmative the opportunity to choose before the debate or choose in the debate whether or not they increase or decrease AI. And I can give a really good example for this. So when I coached at UT Dallas back in the day, we had an affirmative that established the precautionary principle for GMOs.
Okay.
And the precautionary principle is like, unless we know for sure, we shouldn't use a new technology, right? But the way that we played that on the resolution, because the resolution allowed bidirectionality, is if you said GMOs are good, we would say, no, precautionary principle kills GMOs, they're bad. And then if you say GMOs are bad, we would say, no, precautionary principle allows GMOs to flourish through good regulations, they're good, right? And so we would impact turn whatever impact turn you were reading. And it created problems for debatability, for like which side you're debating, for af neg ground, right? Like what is af ground if you can do both AI good and AI bad on the end? Right. And so I think the intent of the topic writers was restrict in some way to say AI bad, although there is potential to say restricting this type of AI might develop another kind of AI.
Okay. What do you think the odds are that you are going to have a list as part of the topic?
I think probably pretty close to 100%.
Okay.
I think every year we try to produce multiple versions of similar resolutions. So last year when we wrote the nukes topic, I think there was a list topic in that as well. The elections topic had a list of court cases, right? The climate topic had a list of areas. So I think every time we produce resolutions, we both try to produce resolutions with lists and resolutions that don't have them to give a little bit more flexibility. And depending on the topic, I think the like preferences of the community, how the resolution shakes out, stuff like that, tend to impact that a lot. So I think this is a year that like, we're almost certainly going to include a list on the list of resolutions. I think just the generic, like non-specific area resolution is too broad. Just fundamentally. Now we may learn differently tonight and Monday and like in the meetings, but that's just kind of my assumption from reading the topic paper, reading the lit. And then I would say that because the topic lends itself towards that will probably be something that a lot of people kind of gravitate towards in either the voting process or the discussion process is some sort of list to have kind of predictable, stable debate areas.
Right. Okay. So over the, for a little over a week, people are going to get their topic, and topic is, at the beginning of summer.
Yes.
What do you recommend? Let's say you have someone watching this, they
Mhm.
are just a competitor, they're not necessarily meeting up over the summer or anything like that, what would you say is common, or what would you recommend for them to do from the moment that the topic is announced?
Pick up books.
Okay.
Like everybody's going to cut articles off the internet
Okay.
for the season, right? When you're doing research, the fastest way to do that is to find like a 20 or 30 page article and read that instead of a
Right.
240 page book. The summertime is the time to like develop your generic topic knowledge
Okay.
about the field, right? You have all summer. Pick up 2 or 3 books on AI, good ones that are well reviewed by experts in the field. Get to know the area so
Mm,
that when you're doing research in the fall, you're not like juggling around like I don't know anything about this topic. Like one of the first things I did last year when the nukes topic came out was I went and I grabbed the Perkovich and Vadi like 300-page article. I grabbed the a couple of other books by kind of the Lieber and Press book, which got read a bunch this year, just to read up on like the current state of like nuclear doctrine.
right.
To give me more of a grounding of like, this is what these group of authors are saying. This is what these group of authors are saying. It helps you sort better when you're doing AF and Neg research later in the season. The second thing I would say for students who just get the topic, if you're a policy-minded debater, until the resolution comes out, you're not going to want to do a bunch of specific research. What you might do as a policy-minded debater who does disad counterplan debate is find 2 or 3 impact areas that are relevant to the topic and go rework those impact files.
Mm,
So particularly on AI, economic growth is going to be a huge impact this year. The ability for AI to affect efficiency, GDP growth, outputs, inputs, etc., right? Maximizing all those things. The economic impacts are unimaginable. So if you're a debater who's like, I love policy debate, and I love impact turn debate, go get your DDEV file ready for next year.
right.
You know, update all your DDEV cards, prep your growth bad arguments, prep your cap bad arguments. And if you're a critique debater, start looking through the critical literature for the area, right? Pick up a couple of books on technology and ontology or technology and security studies and just get immersed in the lit. And the resolution doesn't come out till, 1st of July, which means you've got a month to just know stuff about AI.
Mhm.
And then when the resolution comes out, you can start thinking about, okay, how do I write an affirmative within these parameters, right? But when you've just got a general area, the easiest thing to do is start thinking about it and start reading it.
Okay. I'm just thinking out loud here, but I'm thinking that recent books about the most recent AI technology might be kind of hard to come by because I mean it's been a little over a year. Well, close maybe to 2 years now that ChatGPT's come out. That is long enough for somebody to write a book, but not necessarily the most authoritative person or something like that.
Not necessarily. I kind of agree with that sentiment that like because it's emerging, there's not going to be like long books on it. But I do think that like 4 or 5 years ago, there was a big discussion about what was coming with AI. And
Okay.
I think at that time, there were a lot of these kind of philosophical, what will generative AI look like? What are the potential risks? So while the like specific technologies are new, I think the general discussion has been going on for a while now.
Hmm.
And those are places you can go back and look. I will also say that like, because ChatGPT came out a couple of years ago, you're probably starting to see the first couple of books about its impact
Right.
hit the shelves now, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, while you might not find like this is the definitive authoritative guide on AI, there might be something that came out in the last 6 months that's very, very useful for thinking about how LLMs and generative AI affect the way we think, etc. I know there's been a lot of like debate folks who have been really interested. I know Stefan Burchard,
Mm.
who
Mhm.
has a book on debate and AI already out. Uh,
Oh,
so if students are interested in looking at like how AI can like impact debate and stuff like that, Stefan definitely already has some resources for people to start thinking about. But that book is much more about like the impact of these things on the activity than it
yeah.
is like a policy discussion. But it is, from what I understand, a very useful kind of guide for thinking about like applications of AI in some kind of out of the box ways.
Okay. Um, it seems like the recency of this topic
Mm-hmm.
might make it prone to a lot of critical arguments, right? I
Yep.
mean, like, because like the ability to predict policy outcomes seems less than the ability to like engage in a really critical discussion about like what this means for us And I think, I don't know, it seems like that might be the natural area for this debate to reside.
It might be. I think a lot of that will rely on resolution wording. Right, because I mean, and I'll give you an example of this. I think on the elections topic a couple of years ago that we had, because of the way the resolution was worded, affirmatives had a hard time generating solvency, which meant it was a very good critique topic, right? Had there been a different resolution wording, had it been a courts topic, affirmatives I don't think would have had as hard of a time generating that stuff. Or something like a courts topic doesn't really lend itself to critical arguments as much as like an elections topic that doesn't really solve much, right?
Okay.
And I think in this instance, there is a lot of literature on the intersection of like advanced technology and human development and cognition and social balance, right? And like chaos and all those things. When I think about this topic, I tend to think about things like the complexity K, right? That like the inputs and outputs of complex systems are impossible to predict, right? Stuff like Bill Connolly's work. I also think about stuff like intersections between tech and ontology. So maybe like some old school Heidegger stuff, right? Like maybe updated versions of Heidegger's approach to like why tech is bad for humans. That stuff I think would be really interesting. There's a whole host of racial, gendered, identity-focused arguments about how AI is white male-centered, right? And I think that argument alone is probably like one of the better topic critiques that everyone can read in every debate, which is like AI has always been and will always be programmed by men. Here's a link, right? And there is no restricting of AI that removes the patriarchy that is inevitable in that system since it was coded by dudes, right? And I think that thinking about the topic in that way of like, oh, well, now I can read any identity-based K I want as long as like there's somebody out there who's like AI ignores this group of people or AI was programmed without this group of people in mind, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're absolutely right that I think there's more ground for critical literature. I think the wording of the resolution will then determine how much people tend to head that direction or not, right? Because with this last year's topic, the nukes topic was such a policy-heavy topic. Even the people who like tended to read Ks every once in a while were almost always just disadd, counterpoint.
Right.
I mean, I think we talked about that a little bit in the last podcast with Chad.
Right. And so the wording will matter a whole lot.
Yep.
All right. So we have a basic understanding that you and stuff that people could do over the next month, even before the definitive wording comes out. But let's jump ahead.
Yes.
All right. So now it's a month later. The wording of the topic comes out. It's the middle of the summer. What do people in the NFALD activity do from that moment?
So as a squad, we tend to send out like early wave assignments. Now, I don't know that this is modeled elsewhere, but like once the resolution comes out, I'll give the students about a week to like think about what they want to work on and then start sending out stuff of like, hey, you need to start working on this affirmative. We've talked about this as a team. This is kind of your job for the next month. And then when we meet in August before school, like we'll meet like a week before school starts, we'll kind of check the progress of all those things and see where we need to invest kind of like our resources now that we're all back in person on campus together, right? We'll have a work session the week before. But I think in early July, once you've got the resolution, start plugging keywords of the resolution in to your searches. Figure out, are there solvency advocates? Is there an AF I want to read? And I think the easiest thing to do once the resolution comes out, write your AF for the first tournament. You know, the resolution's not going to change between July 1st and September 20th. And so you have plenty of time to like think about it, test it. The sooner you have that new AF written, the first AF that you're going to read this year, the sooner you can start practicing it. The students who do best at those first few tournaments are the ones who have an AF a month before and have run them through 4 or 5 debates. You know, this isn't my first debate of the season. This is my 6th debate of the season. So I had 4 debates on this topic and this affirmative before I came to my first tournament. The other thing I think to do is once the resolution comes out, go to last year's files. You know, if you debated last year, pull the 10 or 15 files you know that will apply this year, put all those other things in back files, and just restart your file system for this year. I tend to do that in June just because I once the topic area is out, you kind of know which files are going to have like relevant impacts, relevant links. Given that last year was nukes and AI nukes were a big thing, we'll probably hold on to a lot of that stuff for this year, right? So I think file organization early on, so that when you start producing new arguments, you can just kind of plug that stuff in, is really useful. But in July, like, you can't scout, you can't think about what other teams are doing. You just can kind of figure out your own stuff, right?
Right.
Between the topic release and the first tournament, I would say anybody who's looking to like have like a competitive success at that first tournament, you need an AF, you need a couple of disads that are big key topic disads. You need a counter plan that competes with almost all the affirmatives. States counter plan, private corporations counter plan, regulatory negotiations for anybody out there who likes process counter plans. Regulatory negotiations is a great process counter plan. It's like, no, we should negotiate with the companies on what the regulations say. We can't know what they're going to say unless we ask Google, right? And then that counter plan provides like a step where the company can like solve some stuff the AF can't solve. And then have like, if you're going to read a critique this year, have a generic critique argument. The other easy thing to do is start writing a T file. As soon as the resolution comes out, the first thing you should do is just grab definitions for all the key terms.
Right.
And start thinking about like, what is the scope of this? What AFs are allowed? What AFs are not allowed? And can I read T on this topic? Are all the AFs just going to be topical because the topic is so broad, anybody can justify being topical? And then the last thing I would suggest people do is, and this is kind of a plug for something we've been putting together. If you check out the Facebook page and the Facebook group, Shanna Carlson's been asking some questions about the online summer debate cooperative. We host an online 1, maybe 2-week camp this year. I don't really know for sure. That allows students to kind of get a head start on the topic with some online assistance from coaches around the country. Shanna Carlson, David Bowers, a couple of other folks all kind of contribute to have a kind of free online camp for students to join, do some research, get some key files. Like I think last year, the topic affirmative that the camp wrote was read by nearly everyone who went to camp at their first 2 tournaments.
Okay.
So if you're having trouble like writing an AF or thinking about disads, I would strongly encourage debaters to like reach out to Shanna, reach out to the folks running that online debate cooperative. Hell, reach out to me. I've got all their contact information. I can hook you up with like when that's happening. It'll probably be on Discord and Zoom. But I think that's like another big thing that people can do is if they're like struggling or if they don't know where to head, go to the Summer Online Debate Cooperative and see like what they're talking about and see what kind of ideas they have and pull from there.
All right. So that's the NFALD community discussion, right? You have to get a little invitation, not an invitation, but you have to request to join.
You have to request to join, and then either me or the president of NFA will let you in. But yeah, the information should all be up there, as well as the topic meetings over the next couple of weeks. So if you're looking for topic meeting information, the Zoom links are all on the Facebook group. The times and dates are all up there as well.
Okay. Do debaters typically do other types of camps? Now, I know camps are a lot more popular in high school than they are in college. Is there any other camps other than the online co-op?
No. In fact, there were really no LD camps for college students prior to I think maybe last year or the year before. And we kind of recognize that like we need something in the summertime for students who don't have, you know, big squads or a lot of resources for coaching or research or things like that, so that they can kind of collectively produce some files for them to start the year with. And so, I mean, a lot of students, I think, in LD do normal student stuff in the summer. They're not like policy debate kids who are probably going to go work a debate camp or 2, who are probably going to go, you know, do some other stuff. Like our students, like I've got 2 students on vacation right now, you know, LDers tend to kind of live a pretty normal student life, which is one of the things I love about this activity is like, you can be a pretty like active and full like time student successfully and still be successful in this activity.
Okay. So do a lot of them still go off to high schools and coach them as well?
Yeah, I mean, if you'll see a few here and there. We are hosting our first high school debate camp this year, and so most of the people that would do that for us are just going to be helping me this year. So I would say that like if it's like limited to like the folks who host a camp, and then there's students helping out there.
Okay. Well, what's the high school topic? Do you know? or the area?
I honestly don't. I'm going to look like 2 weeks before camp starts and do some research.
I wonder if there's any overlap at all.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I forget.
I've been focused so much on this topic process. I don't like when my buddy told me that NDT had picked climate or energy. I was like, oh, cool. Like I wasn't even paying attention to that topic process because I'm so trying to like get all the pieces in place for this one.
Right. Well, AI, I'm absolutely fascinated with AI. The large language models, I think, have like I got into like really directly studying language as its own thing after grad school, and I really wish that I studied it in grad school to have a bit more of a disciplined and a sort of in-depth look at it. But just the concept of that is so fascinating. And then these things come out. I'm like, I'm really excited to see what sort of arguments come out of this, especially because these debates are happening at the administrative level right now. Like like we don't talk nuclear policy at my college, but we definitely are talking AI policy. So I want to know more of this. I want to see what both sides have, and so I'm very much looking forward.
Well, and that is actually something that's a really good point, Jared. Which is, I think this year is an opportunity for a lot of coaches to sell debate to their administrations. This is why debate's important, because we are discussing the things that are affecting the campus community, the intellectual life of our students, the educational output of our university. Like all of those things are related to this topic. University administrators might be like, who cares about nuclear weapons, right? Like we're on a college campus, but AI affects a college campus, right? And affects administrators individually. So I think that like this year might be a good opportunity for a lot of people to be like, hey, we're talking about things that are really relevant to the campus community and how it gets administered and all those things. So.
Yeah, I mean, even like I've just been recruited to like co-chair some AI task force at my college, and so I really want to, find out a little bit more about this and make sure that I'm really informed. All right. Well, hell, that's our season. This was an excellent season. I thank you for joining us throughout the season. Like I said, we started with Chad, and he roped you into this, and man, you just slid in here with skates on. It was awesome.
I'm glad y'all invited me because this has been a blast. I really think that like this is something that the debate community needs, some sort of kind of like, how do we like talking about debate in a kind of bigger sense. These discussions have been awesome. And I think that like a lot of my students have gone back and watched episodes to figure out like, hey, we need to know more about this argument, or what does Dr. Kirk think about this, and this? Well, they did a podcast episode on that, right? Like, and so I just want to thank you, Jared, for like even having this idea. I know you're doing this with a bunch of different formats, and I just want to like taking the time to do NFALD in addition to all those other formats is pretty awesome. Because sometimes we do get left behind a little bit as the one-person format of policy that's a little bit smaller than NDT. And so I think like making sure that people know that there's a lot of different ways you can debate in college. There's a lot of different opportunities, and depending on like what you like to do, there's probably a debate format that fits your style.
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much, Jared. This has been awesome.
Absolutely. Well, I plan on keeping in touch with you over the summer, and we'll see what we could do for the 24-25 season when it comes to AI.
Excellent. Sounds great, Jared. Talk to you soon.
So, all right. Bye.